Stepping into this world was already a sentence. My mother once said that to me on a rainy night when I was a child. Back then, I didn't understand. I still believed that if I worked hard and stayed kind, everything would be okay. But life doesn't work that way. Now I'm on my knees in the middle of the street, my face pressed against the scorching pavement, my breath ragged under the crushing weight of a cop's knee. Around me, sirens wail, voices murmur, and eyes stare, not with sympathy, but with cold, indifferent curiosity. The metal cuffs bite into my wrists. I hear a scoff above me. Who do you think is going to believe you? I close my eyes. Mama was right. I never stood a chance. I was born in South Central Los Angeles, where the streets are patrolled by cops and filled with wary eyes. Here, just being black makes you a suspect. I learned that at a young age, when my mother was beaten to death by the police over a stupid misunderstanding. From that day on, I knew justice didn't exist for people like me. But I kept going. I kept trying. I worked as a barista in a small cafe, where customers either ignored me or looked at me with pity. I got used to it. I got used to being invisible. But some days it suffocated me, like I was trapped in a box with no way out. I never thought my life could get any worse, until that fateful day. That afternoon, I was wiping down the counter when I heard shouting outside. I looked up and saw a crowd gathering in front of a nearby jewelry store. People were pointing, whispering. There had just been an armed robbery. The thief wore a mask, held a gun, and escaped before the police arrived. I didn't care much. In this neighborhood, things like that happened all the time. I went back to work. Minutes later, the cafe door burst open. 2 cops stormed in, their eyes scanning the room before locking onto me. You. Stay where you are. I frowned, pointing at myself. Me? One of them stepped forward without a word and twisted my arm behind my back. Panic shot through me. Wait. What? He shoved me against the counter, knocking over a cup of coffee. Someone in the cafe screamed, but no one did anything. I felt the cold metal of handcuffs snap around my wrists. What the hell are you doing? I struggled, but it was useless. Cooperate makes it easier. The other cop smirked. He had blonde hair, white skin, and eyes full of disdain. A black woman near the scene of the crime. Convenient, huh? What? You think I... He chuckled. Who do you think they'll believe? They dragged me out onto the street, shoved me to the ground in broad daylight. People were filming. Some were shaking their heads. Some were just watching. Some were laughing. My heart pounded as they threw me into the back of a police car. I wanted to scream, to fight, but I knew that would only make things worse. I had seen too many black people get shot for resisting. I bit my lip, swallowed my tears, and let them take me. At the station, they shoved me into a freezing cold cell. I curled up in the corner, shaking. Time passed slowly. No one spoke to me. No one told me why I was here. A female officer walked by, pausing to look at me through the bars. She smirked. People like you were born to suffer. Her words cut deeper than any wound. I closed my eyes, letting the memories flood in. My mother, beaten to death in front of me while I screamed. My teachers ignoring me in school, like I wasn't worth noticing. The black men I knew, one by one, shot dead or locked up for the dumbest reasons. I had tried to be strong. I had tried to believe that if I lived a good life, things would change. But they hadn't. And at that moment, I realized I didn't want to endure anymore. The next morning, they took me to an interrogation room. I sat there, staring at Officer Monroe with empty eyes. He kept asking me about the robbery, but I didn't care anymore. Then I saw it. On the table, right in front of me, was a taser. A thought flashed through my mind. If I die here, will they regret it? Will they be punished for what they did to me? Or will I just be another forgotten name in a long list of black people who died unfairly? I didn't know, but I didn't care anymore. In a split second, I grabbed the taser and pointed it at my head. Shouts erupted around me. Someone lunged forward, but it was too late. I pulled the trigger. Pain exploded in my skull like fire. I heard screaming, chairs crashing to the floor. Then everything went dark, and suddenly, I was falling. I don't remember the last time I felt at peace. Maybe when I was a child, before life taught me that the world would never be fair to people like me. But right now, I feel nothing, no anger, no pain, no resistance. I can only watch. I see my body slumped over the interrogation table, my hands still twitching slightly, thin wisps of smoke rising from my throat, where the electric current from the taser had just passed through. My eyes are open, but the light is gone. I am dead. And yet, I'm still here. Something isn't right. I should be gone. I should be free. But I don't feel relief. I feel trapped. Then I start falling. There's no warning, no force pulling me, no wind brushing against my skin. I just fall. Darkness swallows me whole. The room disappears. The shouting cops vanish. Everything fades into an abyss so black, so deep, it feels endless. And then, I hear them. Whispers. At first they are faint, like the rustling of leaves. But the deeper I fall, the louder they grow. Don't follow our path. Don't let them take your soul. I twist my body, searching for the source of the voices, and then they appear. Shadows. Faces emerge from the darkness. They are no longer human. They are remnants of what used to be. A man, skeletal thin, a rope still tight around his bruised neck. His eyes are rolled back, his mouth twisted in a silent scream. A woman in a torn dress, her long hair covering most of her face. Her hands are still bound behind her back, her wrists bruised and swollen. A little boy, no older than 10, his body frail, his feet hovering above the ground. His eyes, empty, soulless, stare directly at me, as if he had never been allowed to be a child. I know them. They are the black souls lost to injustice, the forgotten dead, the ones no one cared about. And now, they are trapped. They want to pull me with them. Cold hands reach out, gripping my arms, my legs, my throat. The darkness wraps around me, pulling me deeper. My breath catches in my chest. A primal fear floods through me, making me thrash, struggle. But the darkness is like iron chains, tightening around my body. No, I can't stay here. I open my mouth to scream, but the sound is swallowed. I fight, but the harder I struggle, the stronger the shadows grip me. I'm sinking. I'm being consumed. I will never escape. And then, light erupts. The light doesn't just appear. It shatters the darkness, like an explosion ripping through my soul. An invisible force surges through me, throwing the spirits backward. I am pulled, away, yanked out of the abyss, hurtling toward the golden glow. It is not the harsh burn of the sun, not the cold glare of neon lights. It is warm. It surrounds me, holds me, like the embrace of a mother I never had. And then, I see him. He is not a man with long hair and a white robe, like in paintings. He is light. A being of brilliance, without a defined form, yet I can feel power and love radiating from him. When he speaks, his voice does not come from lips. It echoes inside my soul. I know your pain. But your journey is not over. I break. All the suffering, all the anger, all the grief I've held inside for so long erupts from me. Why? I sob. Why me? Why must I suffer? He does not answer immediately. Instead, he shows me something. I see the past, a past I have never been told. Black people were not born as slaves, not born as the oppressed. We were warriors. We once stood as protectors against the darkness. We were strong. We were fearless. But history was rewritten. The truth was erased. We were turned into victims, into people meant to be broken. I tremble. All my life I was told I was powerless, that I was meant to suffer. But that was never the truth. We were never weak. We were never meant to be weak. God looks at me, and the golden light in his eyes reflects all that I have just seen. You are the chosen one. I shake my head, tears streaming down my face. No, I can't. I don't want to go back. But he only smiles. You must return. You must speak the truth. You must help them remember. Their light. I choke on my breath. His hand presses against my chest. Light floods into me, pouring into my veins, my cells, my breath. I am no longer Amani Carter, the woman the world has trampled. I am Amani Carter, the one who will bring back the light. A brilliant flash engulfs me, and then I open my eyes. I took a deep breath. My chest swelled with life. Pain shot through every cell of my body, as if I had been hurled back into it by a violent force. My breath trembled, unsteady, but I was alive. I opened my eyes. The interrogation room lights were blinding. The faces before me were distorted with horror. Officer Bradley Monroe took a step back, his hand still resting on the gun at his hip. Another officer, the one who had checked my pulse, was stammering something I couldn't quite make out. I looked around. I was still here, in this small, cold room with its suffocating walls. But I had changed. For a few seconds, no one moved. They had thought I was dead, but I had returned. Slowly, I braced my hands against the table and pushed myself up. My body ached, but some unseen force held me steady. No more fear, no more rage, just an unshakable calm. I met Bradley Monroe's gaze. His smug arrogance was gone. Now, in those icy blue eyes, I saw something else. Fear. My voice came out firm, measured. unwavering. I am innocent. No one responded. Silence stretched, as if reality itself was trembling at my words. I looked at each of them. Men who had treated me like a worthless criminal just because of my skin color. But now, they couldn't hide their uncertainty. I saw their shifting eyes, their fingers tightening instinctively around their weapons. They knew. They could feel it. I was no longer prey. Bradley was the first to break. He clenched his jaw and motioned to the officer beside him. If she's still alive, that's even better. Get her out of here. No evidence to hold her. His voice was sharp, but I noticed the slight tremble in his fingers as he scribbled my release papers. When I stepped out of the police station, I was no longer the Amani Carter I had been yesterday. I had seen the truth. I had met God. And I had a mission. I returned to my neighborhood, where the streets were stained with injustice and despair. I watched my people, black men and women moving past me, hurried, exhausted, resigned. They lived like ghosts, without hope, without faith. I understood, because I had once been like them, but I would change that. I found my way to a small church, where Father Samuel, a respected minister, welcomed me inside. As I told him my story, he remained silent for a long time. His eyes held doubt, but beneath it, there was something else, a flicker of belief. "You're saying that God sent you back?" he asked, his deep voice both gentle and piercing. I nodded. Not to live for myself, but to awaken others. He studied me, as if trying to peer into my soul. Then slowly, he smiled. "Then let's begin." From that day forward, I began to share my story. I spoke of pain, of death, of the light I had seen. I spoke of the truth that had been buried for generations, that we were not weak, not hopeless, but warriors who had been made to forget. Some didn't believe me. They said I was delusional, that I just wanted attention. But others listened, and in their eyes, I saw something spark, a glimmer of hope, a suspicion that maybe, just maybe, I was telling the truth. Day by day, my story spread. Those who had once bowed their heads now began to lift them. Those who had remained silent now started to ask questions. I didn't know if I could change the entire world, but I knew one thing: I had returned. And this time, I would not be silent. I wasn't surprised when the backlash began. It came like a storm. The media pounced on me like a pack of hungry wolves, calling me a liar, a delusional fraud, a black woman desperate for attention. Sensational headlines flooded every platform. Black woman claims to have met God, a miracle or a hoax. Truth or hallucination. The bizarre story of Amani Carter sparks controversy. They brought in experts on television to discredit me. They said I was hallucinating from the electric shock. That near-death experiences were nothing more than a dying, brain's last illusions. They invited conservative pastors to denounce my words, claiming that God would never grant such power to someone like me. I read the comments online: mockery, hatred, cruel words from people who had never even met me. But what made me realize this wasn't just a personal attack, but a real battle, were the threats. At first, they were just anonymous messages. "You better shut up before something happens to you. God didn't send you back. We'll make sure you don't get another chance to speak." Then things escalated. I noticed an unfamiliar car parked near my house multiple times. My phone was being tapped. One night, someone threw a brick through my window, attached to a handwritten note. "Stay silent." That's when I knew. It wasn't just random hate. The truth I spoke was dangerous to someone powerful. But I didn't stop. I kept sharing my story, standing at church pulpits, speaking to those who listened. Some with skepticism, some with fear, but many with hope. And then, something incredible happened. My story spread beyond church walls, beyond the struggling neighborhood I called home. Others began to speak up, people who had also had near-death experiences but had been too afraid to share. People who had seen something beyond this world but had been silenced by society. And then, the question started appearing on social media. What if she's telling the truth? Why are they so afraid of her story? If we were truly warriors once, then who made us forget? The small spark I had lit began to spread. Conversations erupted in Black communities. Young people started researching buried history. Elders began to share stories they once feared no one would believe. A movement was forming, not just about faith, but about awakening. I was no longer just Amani Carter. I had become a flame, and I knew from this moment on, no one would ever put me out again.